The High Council had watched the small blue planet for 300 years before they decided to make contact. They had seen humans crawl out of caves and build great cities. They had watched them discover fire, create machines, split atoms, and send their people to the moon. The thought humans were simple creatures, not very advanced, but they believed these beings had potential. They wanted to guide humanity into the galactic concord, a union of thousands of alien species spread across the stars. Ambassador was chosen to lead the first contact mission. He was a respected diplomat who had brought peace to dozens of worlds. His body was tall and thin, made of translucent blue flesh that glowed softly in the dark. He had 4 delicate arms and eyes that could see colors humans could not even imagine. He arrived on Earth with 12 of his finest advisors and guards, landing their beautiful crystalline ship in the Nevada desert where human representatives waited nervously. Commander Daniel Hayes stood at the front of the human delegation. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many conflicts. Beside him stood Dr. Laura, a brilliant scientist who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. She had dreamed of meeting aliens since she was a little girl, and now her dream was coming true. The first meeting went well, spoke of peace and friendship. He told the humans about the wonders of the galaxy, about worlds made entirely of crystal, about stars that sang in frequencies that could heal the soul. The humans listened with excitement and wonder. Daniel Hayes remained cautious, but even he felt hope blooming in his chest. Then everything changed in a single moment. A young Marine named Tors stood guard at the edge of the meeting area. He was 23 years old, born and raised in Texas, and he had joined the military to protect people. That was all he had ever wanted to do. When he saw one of the guards suddenly collapse, he did not think. He simply acted. Rushed forward and caught the alien before it hit the ground. It was lighter than he expected, its blue flesh cool against his hands. Checked for breathing, for a pulse, for any sign of what was wrong. He did not know how to help an alien, but he had to try. The entire delegation froze in absolute horror. What did not know was that touching a without permission was considered a declaration of war in 37 star systems. It was the greatest insult one could give. Wars had been fought over less. Entire planets had burned because of such offenses. Raised his weapon, a sleek device that hummed with deadly energy. His translucent face twisted with rage and fear. His guards followed his lead, all of them pointing their weapons at the young Marine who was still trying to help their fallen comrade. Daniel Hayes saw what was happening and made a choice that would change the course of galactic history. He stepped forward, placing himself between the armed aliens and Tors. He had no weapon. His hands were raised in a gesture of peace. His heart was pounding, but his face showed no fear. "Wait," Daniel said calmly. He was trying to help. Stared at the human commander. In all his years of diplomacy, in all his encounters with hundreds of species, he had never seen anything like this. A creature with no armor, no weapons, no natural defenses, had just placed himself in front of a dozen armed warriors, and he showed no fear, none at all. The collapse began to stir. It was just a simple fainting spell caused by Earth's unfamiliar atmosphere, nothing serious. The guard sat up, confused but unharmed, and looked around at the tense scene with bewilderment. But the damage had been done. They had witnessed something that would haunt their dreams for generations to come. Tors had moved faster than their eyes could track. Their species was known for quick reflexes, yet this human had crossed the distance before any of them could react. And then Daniel Hayes had stepped into the line of fire without hesitation, as if his own life meant nothing compared to protecting his fellow human. Slowly lowered his weapon. His 4 arms were trembling slightly, though he tried to hide it. "What manner of creatures are you?" he asked quietly. Daniel Hayes did not understand the weight of that question. He simply shrugged. "We're human. We help each other. It's what we do." Laura stepped forward, her scientific mind already working to smooth over the diplomatic disaster. She explained that humans had evolved as social creatures, that helping others in distress was hardwired into their very nature. She spoke of empathy, of compassion, of the bonds that held human communities together. Listened, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the reports he had read about humanity, reports that had seemed exaggerated, impossible, surely mistakes in translation. Humans could run for hours without stopping, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They consumed poisons for pleasure, substances that would kill most species in the galaxy. They lived on a world covered in a universal solvent they called water, a substance so dangerous that it could dissolve almost anything given enough time. And now he had seen them move with impossible speed and show impossible courage. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. They were no longer looking at humans as primitive creatures in need of guidance. They were looking at them the way prey looks at a predator it does not yet understand. That night sent a message to the Galactic Concord. It was flagged as highest priority, a designation he had never used before in his long career. "The humans are not what we expected," he wrote. "They display traits we have only observed in the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They are pack hunters with extreme endurance. They show no fear in the face of death. They protect each other with a ferocity that defies logic. I recommend extreme caution in all future dealings with this species. They may be primitive in technology, but they are anything but primitive in spirit. I believe we may have made a terrible mistake in revealing ourselves to them." The message traveled across the stars at faster than light speeds. Within days, every major power in the galaxy had read it. Within weeks, the humans had become the most discussed topic in 1,000 alien governments. And somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, an ancient empire called the Dominion of the Endless Night received the message as well. Their leader, a cruel being known only as the Archon, read the report with great interest. "Fascinating," he said to himself. "A species that does not know fear. I think I shall teach them." He began planning his invasion that very night, not knowing that he was about to make the worst mistake in the history of his empire. On Earth, Daniel Hayes looked up at the stars and felt a strange sense of unease. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones, and whatever it was, humanity would need to be ready. He just hoped they would have enough time to prepare. Word spread through the Galactic Concord like fire through dry grass. Every species, every government, every trader and traveler was talking about the same thing. The humans were not what they appeared to be. These simple creatures from a small blue planet were something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. On the station world of Nexus Prime, Ambassador represented Earth in the Great Hall where 1,000 species gathered to debate and trade. She was 53 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent 30 years as a diplomat, ending conflicts on 3 continents before being chosen for this assignment. She believed in peace, in understanding, in finding common ground between different peoples. The other ambassadors watched her with poorly hidden fear. Noticed their stares but pretended she did not. She walked through the crowded halls with her head held high, nodding politely to those who would meet her eyes. Most looked away quickly. Some actually stepped back as she passed, as if afraid she might attack them at any moment. The ambassador from the Empire finally approached her during a diplomatic reception. He was a large creature covered in scales that shifted colors based on his emotions. Right now, those scales were flickering between orange and purple, colors that had learned meant anxiety and curiosity. "You must understand our concern," said, his voice a deep rumble. "Your species exhibits traits we have only seen in the most dangerous predators of the galaxy." Maintained her polite smile, such as, "Endurance hunting," replied. "Our scientists have studied your evolutionary history. Your ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You would follow an animal for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never giving up, until it simply could not run anymore. No other sapient species in the known galaxy evolved this way. "We adapted to our environment," said simply. Scales shifted to a deeper purple. "You consume ethanol for pleasure, a substance that would kill most species in small doses. Wine has a long cultural history on Earth. Your planet is covered in monoxide, a universal solvent that can dissolve almost anything. Your bodies are 60% this substance. You require it to survive." Kept smiling. "We call it water. Would you like some?" Actually stepped backward, his scales flashing bright orange. For a moment, felt bad for teasing him. But she also understood that she needed to establish that humans would not be intimidated. If the galaxy saw humanity as weak, they would be treated as weak, and that could be dangerous for Earth. Meanwhile, across the vast emptiness of space, a different kind of storm was brewing. The dominion of the endless night had conquered 200 worlds over the past 1,000 years. They were the most feared empire in the galaxy, ruled by a being called the Archon who had never known defeat. The Archon sat on his throne of black crystal, reviewing the intelligence reports about Earth with growing interest. He was not a large creature, but his presence filled any room he entered. His body was made of living obsidian, smooth and dark and cold. His eyes glowed with a pale light that had made countless enemies tremble. "Small population," he noted, reading the data. "Limited technology, fractured political systems. They cannot even agree among themselves on basic governance." He set down the and smiled, revealing teeth like shards of black glass. "They will fall within a standard rotation." His chief advisor, a nervous creature called, hesitated before speaking. Was small and gray, with too many eyes and not enough courage. But he was also intelligent, which was why the Archon kept him around. "There are concerning reports," Archon said carefully. "The humans display unusual resilience. Their planet's gravity is twice the conquered standard. They evolved alongside megafauna that would be classified as war beasts on any civilized world." The Archon laughed, a sound like breaking stone. "Savages with spirit, how refreshing. It has been too long since we faced an enemy worthy of our attention. Prepare the invasion fleet." Wanted to argue, wanted to show the Archon the other reports he had gathered. Reports of humans surviving injuries that would kill any other species. Reports of humans who had cut off their own limbs to escape traps and survived. Reports of a human disease called cancer, where their own cells tried to kill them, and yet they fought it and sometimes won. But knew better than to argue with the Archon. He simply bowed and went to carry out his orders. Back on Earth, the news of the approaching Dominion fleet arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Daniel Hayes received the transmission in the command center of the newly built Earth Defense Initiative headquarters. The building was buried deep under a mountain in Colorado, designed to survive almost anything. Laura stood beside him, her face pale as she read the data. 100 warships, she whispered, each one larger than anything we could build. "How long do we have?" asked Bell, a young officer who had just been assigned as liaison between the military and the scientific divisions. She was 28 years old, smart and determined, with the kind of calm focus that served well in a crisis. 3 months, Daniel replied. "Maybe 4 if they encounter any delays." Laura pulled up more information on her screen. "We have no fleet to speak of. A few dozen converted cargo ships with weapons bolted on. No planetary shields. Our best weapons are centuries behind theirs in development." Daniel stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the display that showed the approaching doom. 100 warships, millions of enemy soldiers, technology that made humanity's best efforts look like toys. Then he did something that surprised both women. He smiled. "Then we had better get creative," he said. "Humanity has always done its best work when our backs are against the wall. We have 3 months to prepare for the fight of our lives." He turned to face them both. "I want every scientist, every engineer, every creative mind on this planet working on solutions. Nothing is too crazy to consider. Nothing is off limits. Belle felt something stir in her chest. It might have been fear, but it felt more like excitement. "What do you need me to do, Commander?" "Find me people who refuse to give up," Daniel said. "Find me the stubborn ones, the ones who keep fighting when everyone else has quit. We are going to need every single one of them." In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. The nations of Earth, which had spent centuries fighting each other over borders and resources and ideologies, began to work together. Old enemies shared technology and intelligence. Scientists who had competed their entire careers now collaborated freely. Soldiers from every country trained side by side. Humanity was preparing for war. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, the Dominion fleet drew closer, completely unaware of what they were about to face. The Archon had conquered 200 worlds. He believed Earth would be 201. He was wrong. Earth would be his last. The Dominion fleet arrived on a clear summer day, blocking out the sun over half the planet. 100 warships hung in the sky like dark clouds of death. Each ship was miles long, covered in weapons that could turn cities to ash in seconds. The people of Earth looked up and saw their doom written across the heavens. The Archon stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue and green world below. It was a beautiful planet, he had to admit. The water that covered most of its surface sparkled like jewels in the sunlight. Soon it would belong to him, like everything else he had ever wanted. He broadcast his demands across every frequency, ensuring that every human on the planet could hear his words. "People of Earth, I am the Archon of the Dominion of the Endless Night. Your world now belongs to me. Surrender peacefully and you will be allowed to live as servants. Resist and you will be exterminated. You have 1 hour to respond." The response came in less than 5 minutes. It was delivered by President Samuel Grant, a former history teacher from Ohio who had never wanted to be a wartime leader. He was a small man with glasses and a quiet voice, but when he spoke, every human on Earth listened. "This is our home," Samuel said simply. "Come and take it if you can." The Archon had conquered 200 worlds. He had heard defiance before, but something about this human's voice made him pause. There was no fear in it, no desperation, just calm, absolute certainty. He pushed the feeling aside and gave the order to attack. The first wave of Dominion soldiers landed in northern Canada, expecting minimal resistance. They had conquered worlds with far larger armies. They had faced enemies with far superior technology. These humans, with their primitive weapons and soft bodies, would fall quickly. They were wrong. The Canadian wilderness was not kind to the invaders. The cold attacked their environmental suits, seeping through seams that had been designed for different climates. The terrain swallowed their vehicles, turning solid ground into treacherous mud that grabbed and held. The forests were thick and dark, full of shadows where anything could hide. And hiding in those shadows were the humans. Sergeant Maria led a National Guard unit that had been stationed in the region. She was 42 years old, a mother of 3, and she had grown up hunting in these woods with her father. She knew every tree, every rock, every stream. She knew where the ground was solid and where it would collapse. She knew how to move without making a sound. Now she used that knowledge to hunt the most dangerous prey she had ever faced. The Dominion soldiers had better weapons. Their armor could stop most human bullets. Their scanners could detect heat signatures from miles away. On paper, they should have won easily. But Maria and her soldiers did not fight on paper. They fought in the real world, where nothing went according to plan. They attacked at night when the aliens were least prepared. They used the cold to mask their body heat, covering themselves in snow and frozen mud. They set traps using nothing but ropes and sharpened wood. They appeared from nowhere, struck hard and fast, and vanished before the enemy could respond. Within 3 days, the Northern Landing Force had lost half its soldiers, not through any great battle but through 1,000 small attacks. A patrol ambushed here. A supply convoy destroyed there. Sentries found dead in the morning, their throats cut by blades that left no evidence. The Dominion commanders could not understand it. Their soldiers were better trained, better equipped, better in every measurable way. Yet they were losing. On the orbital front, the situation was even more desperate. The human fleet was a joke compared to the Dominion Armada, a collection of cargo ships and passenger vessels that had been hastily converted into warships. They were outnumbered and outmatched in every way. Commander Lisa Park commanded this ragtag fleet from the bridge of a converted cargo hauler she had named the Defiant. She was 35 years old with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much loss. She had studied naval history extensively, reading about desperate battles where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through courage and cunning. Now she would put those lessons to the test. Her squadron of 12 ships faced the Dominion vanguard of 30 warships. They should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, Lisa employed tactics the Dominion had never seen before. She sent ships on suicide runs that veered away at the last second, drawing enemy fire while missiles hidden in debris fields struck from unexpected angles. She jammed their communications, forcing them to fight blind and confused. She used asteroids and space junk as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. And when the Defiant's weapons finally failed, when her ship was crippled and burning, Lisa gave the order that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. All hands prepare for emergency transport, then set course for their flagship, ramming speed. Her crew did not hesitate. They had known this might happen. They had all volunteered anyway. The Dominion captain watched in horror as the human vessel accelerated toward his ship. Its hull was on fire. Its weapons were dead. It should have been no threat at all, but the humans were not trying to fight anymore. They were trying to die, and they wanted to take him with them. At the last possible moment, Lisa activated the emergency transport, beaming her crew to waiting shuttles as the Defiant's reactor went critical. The explosion was massive, a bloom of fire and light that consumed 3 Dominion warships in an instant. The Archon received the battle report in stunned silence. "They weaponized their own ship?" he asked. Nodded nervously. "They weaponize everything, Archon, their vehicles, their buildings, their own bodies." He paused, unsure if he should continue. "We captured a wounded human soldier this morning. She was restrained with bonds that could hold a war beast. She bit through them with her teeth and attacked the guards. It took 4 soldiers to subdue her." "That is impossible." "I have the footage, Archon. Would you like to see it?" The Archon did not respond. He simply stared at the tactical display, watching as his forces continued to struggle against an enemy that should have been crushed hours ago. On the ground in the cold forests of Canada, Maria watched a Dominion patrol pass below her hiding spot. Her face was painted with mud and ash. Her body was covered in cuts and bruises. She had not slept in 36 hours. She smiled and raised her rifle. The war had just begun, and humanity was far from beaten. In fact, they were just getting started. 6 months had passed since the Dominion invaded Earth. 6 months of blood and fire and death. The Archon controlled the skies, his warships circling the planet like hungry vultures. But he could not control the ground. No matter how many soldiers he sent down, no matter how many cities he burned, the humans kept fighting. Every city had become a fortress. Every building was a trap waiting to be sprung. The concept of civilian noncombatants seemed to not exist for these humans. Old men and women took up weapons alongside soldiers. Children learned to make bombs from household chemicals and hide them along supply routes. Even the pets attacked the invaders, dogs and cats that had been trained to bite and scratch and run. The Dominion soldiers began to fear the dark. They feared the silence even more, because silence meant the humans were planning something terrible. Dr. Laura had been captured during an evacuation 3 weeks earlier. Her research station had been overrun while she was trying to save critical data about human biology. She had hoped that information might help find a weakness in the Dominion soldiers. Instead, she found herself in a cell on the Archon's flagship, waiting to be questioned. She had expected torture. She had prepared herself for pain and fear. Instead, she received a visitor she never anticipated. The Archon himself stood outside her cell, his obsidian body gleaming in the dim light. He was smaller than she had imagined from the propaganda videos, maybe 7 feet tall, thin and elegant in a cruel sort of way. Symbols of all the worlds he had conquered were carved into his chest, hundreds of marks representing billions of lives destroyed. "You fascinate me," the Archon said. His voice was like stones grinding together, rough and cold. "Your species fights without any hope of victory. You sacrifice yourselves for complete strangers. You laugh in the face of certain death. Why do you do this?" Laura met his glowing eyes without looking away. She had been afraid when they first captured her. That fear had burned away over 3 weeks of captivity, replaced by something harder and colder. "Because giving up is not in our nature," she said. "Nature can be broken," the Archon replied. "I have broken 1,000 species. I have crushed resistance on 200 worlds. Every creature eventually submits when faced with enough pain." "Not us." Laura stood up from the bench where she had been sitting. She was shorter than the Archon, weaker, completely at his mercy, but she stood tall anyway. "Do you know what humans did when we discovered fire? We learned to cook our food, yes, but we also learned to burn down entire forests to reshape our world. When we split the atom, we created energy that could power cities. We also created weapons that could destroy everything we had ever built." The Archon tilted his head, curious despite himself. "Every tool we touch becomes a weapon," Laura continued. "Every challenge we face makes us stronger. You have attacked our home, Archon. You have given 8 billion humans a common enemy to fight. You have united a species that spent most of its history fighting itself." She smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "You have made the worst mistake of your very long life. You think your species can win this war." "I think you have already lost," Laura said. "You just do not know it yet." The Archon stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. Laura sat back down on her bench and closed her eyes. She did not know if she believed what she had said, but she knew the Archon did not believe it either. And that uncertainty, that tiny seed of doubt, might be the most important weapon humanity had. Across the galaxy, far from the burning battlefields of Earth, the High Council had been watching the war with growing alarm. Ambassador, who had led the first contact mission, now stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Conquered with urgent words. "We must intervene," he declared. His 4 arms were spread wide, a gesture of pleading among his people. Not to save the humans, but to save the Dominion from themselves. Of the Empire laughed bitterly. His scales flashed red with anger. "You wish us to protect our enemies. The Dominion has threatened worlds for generations. Let them suffer at the hands of these humans." "You do not understand," insisted. "I'm trying to prevent what the humans will become if they are pushed too far." He activated a holographic display showing Earth and the surrounding space. "Their history is filled with examples of what happens when they are cornered. They burned their own cities rather than let enemies capture them. They developed weapons capable of rendering their entire planet uninhabitable and pointed them at each other. They called this strategy mutually assured destruction, and they considered it a reasonable approach to maintaining peace." The assembly fell silent. "If the Dominion continues this war," continued, "the humans will not simply resist. They will adapt. They will learn. They will take Dominion technology and improve it. They have already begun reverse engineering captured weapons. Within a year, they will have ships that can challenge the Dominion fleet. Within 5 years, they will surpass it." "Impossible," said an ambassador from a species Laura would not have recognized. "No species advances that quickly." "Most species do not," agreed. "But humans are not most species. They learn from their enemies. They grow stronger from every defeat. And when they have won this war, and I believe they will win, they will remember who helped them and who did not. Who had remained as Earth's ambassador even during the war, rose to speak. She was older now, worn down by months of stress and fear, but her voice was still strong. "We did not ask for this conflict," she said. "We do not want to conquer anyone. We simply want to survive and protect our home. But Ambassador is correct about one thing." She paused, looking around at the assembled aliens who had spent centuries thinking of humans as primitive and harmless. "We are very, very good at learning from our enemies, and we remember everything." The vote to intervene passed 3 days later, not because the Galactic Concord cared about Earth, but because they were afraid of what would happen if they did not act. On Earth, Daniel Hayes received news of the coming reinforcements with cautious hope. The tide was turning, but the war was not over yet. In her cell on the Archon's flagship, Laura heard the distant sound of explosions and smiled. Help was coming, and the Dominion was about to learn why the rest of the galaxy feared humanity. The war ended not with a great battle or a dramatic last stand, but with a quiet realization that crept through the Dominion fleet like a slow poison. The Archon had lost 40% of his warships to a species that had no proper navy. His ground forces had been cut in half by defenders who seemed to grow stronger with every defeat they suffered. And now, with the Galactic Concord threatening to intervene, even his remaining commanders were beginning to question whether victory was possible. Worse than the losses were the stories. The Dominion soldiers who survived encounters with humans came back changed. They whispered fearful tales in the dark corners of their ships, tales of humans who kept fighting with missing limbs, tales of humans who smiled while bleeding, tales of humans who treated wounds that would kill any other species as minor inconveniences. One soldier described watching a human female get shot through the chest. She had looked down at the wound, looked back up at him, and then charged forward to tackle him to the ground. She had broken his arm in 3 places before other soldiers pulled her off. When they examined her later, they discovered the shot had punctured her lung. She should have been dead. Instead, she had been fighting. Another soldier described capturing a human male who was missing his left arm. The human had cut it off himself to escape a collapsed building. He had cauterized the wound with a piece of heated metal and walked 20 miles through hostile territory to rejoin his unit. When the Dominion soldiers found him, he was teaching other humans how to make explosives from farming chemicals. The Archon summoned his war council to the throne room of his flagship. Around the great black table sat his finest generals, his most brilliant strategists, the commanders who had helped him conquer 200 worlds. Not one of them could offer a path to victory. Stood at the far end of the table, his many eyes darting nervously between the angry faces of the generals. He had been gathering information about humans for months now. What he had learned terrified him. "Tell them," the Archon commanded. Swallowed hard. "We have studied the humans extensively. Their biology is remarkable beyond anything in our records. They heal from injuries that would be fatal to us. They can regrow damaged tissue at an extraordinary rate. They function without sleep for days when necessary. Their pain tolerance exceeds anything we have ever measured." The generals shifted uncomfortably. "There is more," continued. "Their psychological resilience is beyond comprehension. We have tried to break captured humans through traditional methods. It does not work. They support each other, comfort each other, maintain hope even in the worst conditions. Some of them actually become more determined when faced with hardship." "This is impossible," one of the generals growled. "No species is immune to suffering." "They are not immune," replied. "They simply refuse to surrender to it. They have a concept they call spite. When faced with impossible odds, many humans become motivated specifically because they want to prove their enemies wrong. Hurting them makes them stronger. Threatening them makes them more dangerous." The Archon leaned forward on his throne. "What else have you learned?" Hesitated, then activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing humans with various animals: dogs, cats, horses, birds. They keep pets, predators they have domesticated through sheer force of will. Do you see this creature? He pointed to an image of a wolf. Thousands of generations ago, this was a wild predator that hunted in packs. The humans looked at it and decided they wanted it to be their friend. So they bred it, trained it, transformed it over centuries until it became completely loyal to them. He changed the image to show a small dog sitting in a human's lap. This is what that predator became. They did not conquer the wolf. They made it love them. Silence filled the chamber. They bond with inanimate objects as well, added. They name their vehicles, their weapons, their tools. They develop emotional attachments to machines. One captured pilot refused to abandon her damaged fighter as it burned. She stayed with it, trying to save it, because she said it had kept her alive and deserved better than to die alone. The Archon closed his eyes. He had conquered 200 worlds. He had crushed species that were stronger, smarter, more numerous than the humans. But he had never faced anything like this. The terrifying truth, said slowly, is that humans are not simply survivors, they are adapters. Every environment, every challenge, every enemy they face becomes part of them. They do not conquer through strength alone. They conquer through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They would rather die than give up. And somehow, that refusal to give up usually means they do not die. The Archon made his decision that night. He ordered the withdrawal. The remaining Dominion ships left Earth's orbit 3 days later. They did not announce their departure or explain their reasons. They simply left, fleeing a world they should have conquered easily. 1 year later, Earth officially joined the Galactic Concord as a full member. Ambassador signed the accords with the same patient smile she had worn through every negotiation. She was 60 years old now, her hair completely white, but her eyes still held that unshakable calm that had served her so well. Daniel Hayes retired from military service to teach at the academy, training the next generation of defenders. He never forgot the soldiers who had died under his command. He honored them by making sure the next generation would be even better. Laura returned to her research with access to alien technology and knowledge beyond her wildest dreams. She published papers that revolutionized a dozen scientific fields. But she always remembered that cell on the Archon's flagship and the fear she had seen in his eyes when she told him humanity would never surrender. Lisa Park received command of Earth's first true warship, built using human determination and alien engineering. She named it the Defiant II in honor of the ship she had sacrificed. Its crew was the finest Earth had to offer, and they all understood what it meant to serve on a vessel with that name. Belle became Earth's youngest ambassador to the Galactic Concord. She had a talent for making friends with species that had once feared humanity. She reminded them that humans protected what they loved, and humanity had decided to love the galaxy. Maria returned to her home in Canada, to her 3 children who had survived the occupation by hiding in the forest she had taught them to love. She never spoke much about the war. She did not need to. The scars on her body told their own story. Throughout the galaxy, species who had once considered humans primitive now watched them with a mixture of respect and quiet terror. They had been right all along. Humans were something new in the cosmos, not the strongest, not the most advanced, but something far more dangerous. They were the species that simply refused to stay down. In a bar on Nexus Prime, Belle sat across from, sharing a drink that they could barely tolerate. They had become unlikely friends over the past year, bound by the shared experience of surviving the war and building peace from its ashes. "Your people still frighten me," admitted. "Even after everything, even knowing you are allies, I still feel fear when I look at humans." Nodded, she understood. "We frighten ourselves sometimes." "How do you live with such chaos in your hearts? The violence and the compassion, the madness and the love. How do you contain it all?" Considered the question carefully. She swirled her drink, watching the light play through the amber liquid. "We do not contain it," she finally said. "We channel it. Every terrible thing about us, every beautiful thing, it all serves the same purpose in the end." "Which is?" "Survival, but not just our own," she smiled warmly. "We protect what we love, and we have decided that we love this galaxy." The ambassador felt a chill run through his translucent body, because he understood now what the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to grasp. The humans were not just another species to be watched and worried about. They were a force that had claimed the entire galaxy as their family. And heaven help anyone who threatened that family. The war was over, but the legend of humanity was just beginning. Throughout the stars, in every corner of the galaxy, species told stories of the small blue world that had refused to fall. They told stories of soldiers who fought without fear, of scientists who turned captivity into defiance, of commanders who sacrificed everything for victory. And they all ended the same way, with a warning. Never threaten Earth, never harm a human, because humanity protects its own. And now the entire galaxy was its own.